as we are all currently active in the real estate market, we will not be surprised at some of the statistics. And so today's mission is to have a conversation about what's happening out there that you may not know, may not be aware of. Talk about how to frame the information, the things that we know about the market in a way that will move our clients into action. And then talk about some of the things that we need to pay attention to and leverage as opportunities to engage with our clients whenever we see things start to happen. So these are our year over year inventory levels as a country by state. Everything in red is down at least 30%. The dark red is 45 to 60, and then the deep red is more than 60% down. Now, here's the good news. Inventory is only down 5% in Hawaii, and it takes 60 hours of pre-licensing education and then passing the exam to get your Hawaii real estate license. So if the state needed anything else to make it more attractive, that would be it. So this is not anything new or maybe even particularly interesting to anybody on this call that's operating the environment. You know this, but just know that we have one of the hottest real estate markets in the country right now in Northeast Ohio. We're going to talk about why that is and what's driving that. But also that this is a global, or a countrywide issue. And so some of the things that we'll talk about today are macro elements, and some of the things are hyper local. And so we'll want to be aware of both of those as they'll drive things. The number one thing that we can do, though, when we look at a map like this, is just breathe, right? And remind our clients to do the same thing. There have been a lot of people getting into homes, getting into winning in multiple offers. There are success stories every single day on both sides of every single deal. And we want to first and foremost remind our clients that that's possible. So this is a capture of the last 25 months, maybe 24 months, 25 months in our market. This is our MLS data. So the light green line is for sale. The dark green line is your solds. The red line is pended. And the blue line is new listings. And so what you can see there is the inventory trend that we have been on. We've been on for well before 6 months before the pandemic, right? And we've been in a seller's market for probably 36 months. And so what we saw the pandemic do in our industry is what it did in all industries, which was accelerate trends, right? And so accelerating those trends brought inventory way down, brought the cost of money way down, which allowed more people to buy, which then caused prices to go back up. And that cycle is what we are in right now. The most unique thing is that looking at the data in the past 5 to 7 years at least, there have been 1 to 2 months, 2 months, both of them the month of December, where listings had dropped below pended properties, right? What we have seen for the last 3 months, and this month is no different, is that pendings are outpacing listings, which makes it really hard to accrue inventory and get some stability. I know we feel like there's some things coming back. It hasn't manifested itself in the data yet. So I think what we need to know for our clients is, how we're telling the story. So here's a high-level overview of our year-to-date market stats. Inventory in the market's down 55%. Listings are down 16%. Pended properties are up 8% year-to-date, and sold properties are down 2%. So those are your major headlines. But what we want to look at for the purposes of our businesses, right? Data can tell, but stories sell. And so where we are engaging our clients and what we are engaging them with is going to determine how they react to this market. The first thing that I'll say is that we would do our clients a really good service to not assume that they understand everything that's happening in the market. Like, we live in it every day, and we get, we get, a little smell blind to what's actually going on, and we don't tell our clients what's happening. Inventory's low, especially on the front end, but even just reminding them, like, just because you lost in 5 offers doesn't mean that you get to win the 6th one, right? There are lessons to learn there, and we want to pull those out. We want to be having those conversations. But before we get into what we're going to tell our buyers, let's talk about the conversation we can have with potential sellers, right? Listings have never been more important in a marketplace. They've never provided more leverage. There's never been a higher degree of certainty that they'll sell, let alone above asking price at this current moment. So I wanted to put together some information that you can put in front of your clients to help them understand where opportunity dwells, right? And opportunity dwells typically where responsibility has been abdicated. And so there's a lot of people out there who don't necessarily know that their home value, if you go back into your Rolodex and look at who you sold a home to in 2015, right? Or who bought a home in 2015, there's a 47% gain in average sales price in our MLS in the last 6 years, right? And you say, oh, okay, well, I didn't sell any houses in 2015. Great. It's 41% since 2016 and 32% from the next year. You sold somebody a house in 2018, there's a 25% on average or average sales price increase, right? So the conversations you're able to have with the seller, right, aren't just around, the market's hot, anybody will buy your home, you can get cash offers. It's the fact that there is nary a market that, isn't on an ocean that has this level of appreciation this consistently, right? And so we are unsure if we're at the top of the market, right? But we know we're at the top so far. And so the opportunity for your clients right now is to take this and put it in front of them and ask them when they bought their house. Or go on the auditor's website, see when they bought their house, and then put this in front of them and have a conversation with, what might be possible, right? And if you're fortunate enough to have sold a property in their neighborhood, or you just rip down the comps from the MLS, put that next to it, because in their area, it might be something closer to 60 or 70% since they bought it in 2015, right? It depends on what they bought it at. It depends on where it is. We know that. But from a general standpoint, the opportunity may never be greater, and certainly hasn't been this great in a long, long time. So what's happening is we're continuing to see appreciation because of cheap money and high demand. Now, we also like to say we don't list homes, we sell homes. And we can say that all you want, but 5 or 6 years ago, it was more than 3 months on the market. And so that feels a lot more like a listing than a sale. But for those of you who have secured listings and are aware of how quickly they can go, the opportunity to sell a home in the first week, if not the first weekend, if not for some of you I know I've talked to in the first day, the chance for us to be the hero and to help somebody cash in really aggressively is there, and the opportunity to do it very quickly is there. So what I want you to think about here is you look at this, there is a extremely high degree of certainty with the listing market right now that as long as you don't have extra commas in the price, there's a pretty good chance that it's going to sell, right? And so with that in mind, right, what are the things that you can do to make it easier for your potential sellers to sell, right? Because at this point, right? There's a lot of good information out there that says, hey, there's a tremendous opportunity here to cash in on some equity, to take advantage of high appreciation over the last nearly decade here in this market. So what would you do to secure that listing, right? Would you, I don't know, would you clean their house, pay for their POS to be completed? Would you, oh, I don't know where I'd live. Cool, I'll put you up in an Airbnb for a month, right? While you figure it out. I mean, there's calculus involved here, but if we take the position, right, of providing great customer service to access more listings, right? Not only do we create a client for life, not only do we build a big moat around our database, not only do we make it harder for the one-click transactions and the technology companies out there that are trying to make it really easy to sell your home now, right? They all lack a customer experience. And so what we want to talk about as it relates to sales and securing sellers is, what are you willing to do above and beyond just the sign in the art? Because right now, I mean, it's never easy to be a real estate agent. However, the marketing and the beating of the streets, so to speak, to sell a listing isn't quite what it used to be, or isn't what it'll be here in a couple of years. That's for sure. So what are the other things that are going to put you at a 10 out of 10 in the face of a potential seller so that they say yes and list with you? So use this to start the conversation, but then, we close the conversation with our unique value proposition. But we also know that we don't just have sellers, we have buyers as well. So let's make sure that we're having conversations with every single one of our buyers about the potential for new construction, right? We, a couple weeks ago, had some friends from KWGM on here to talk about the process of working with them. If you are intimidated by or concerned about or don't know how to navigate the process of new construction for your client, that's a major blind spot that we would love to help you solve. Because if you look at what's happening with new home starts, right, the permitting, right, which is the very tip of the spear in that, the starts and the completions, this is going to be an ever increasing part of the business potentially. And as inventory doesn't look like we're accruing anytime soon, right? We're not going to see any inventory builds. So this will be a major outlet for the people that have to buy, right? That have to buy. And so the opportunity here is to get familiar with it, make it a part of your buyer consultation, show that the opportunity here from a new construction standpoint, there's more options, there's less pressure, there's less aggressiveness, there's a ton of things that might be attractive to a buyer here. And that the opportunity, because of the build times, this opportunity doesn't appear that it's going away anytime soon. And then that brings us to one of the main things that we need to stay in conversation and relationship with our buyers around, which is what's happening with mortgage rates, what is the cost of money, and what is the opportunity. So we've seen some movement in the the interest rate market, in the past 30 days. I think we'll turn it over to Sean and Don here momentarily. But the sentiment is that we are still at historic lows, and the buyers agree. We've seen some movement, and we haven't seen that reflected in their behavior. And so I think as we see things move throughout the threes, the conversation remains the same, right? Like the flash in the pan of the low to mid twos, like that may not come back. It's unlikely that it will. And our clients should know that, so they're not waiting, it's for interest rates to hit the floor. However, they're still operating in an environment that, our parents and their grandparents would be very jealous of. But you don't have to know everything about every single market, especially the mortgage market, because we have these really great partners. My gosh, these guys, when it comes to mortgages, they got more moves than U-Haul. So what, gentlemen, Can you tell us about what's going on in your world? What's happening with pre-approvals? What's happening with what's the vibe at Cross Country?
Okay, I'll kick it off here. Dan will touch on a little bit here, but just to run through some things, we're still seeing heavy activity. We did feel obviously interest rates where they're at are always good to talk about. Hey, rates are going down, jump on it while you can. Hey, rates are going up, jump on it while you can. So it's a big motivator. With rates ticking up as much as they did over the past 6 weeks, we didn't feel too much of a change in pre-approvals and applications, maybe just a little bit, but nothing significant. You know, the conversations I was fearing is, hey, you're pre-approved and today's rate's 2.75. 3 weeks later, hey, today's rate's 3.1 or 3.25. Nobody was hitting the panic button. I think probably most people were just happy to be under contract after 3 or 4, rounds of offers and such. So all in all, I think we're seeing a good sort of attitude still, even with rates ticking up as they did. Running through a couple of statistics just kind of in the first quarter. Forbearance, if you recall, when that kicked in just shy of a year ago, we were talking about how this was going to be a huge impact. And it was on the mortgage side, but it was on the servicing end. June kind of hit the high water mark of 8.5% of all mortgages were in forbearance. It's now down under 5%. Probably a combination of a lot of people getting out of forbearance who really never needed to be in it. And then a lot of people would actually work for somebody who lost their job, was out of work for 6 months. Maybe they're back now in the workforce, and the forbearance did exactly what was needed. We're seeing distressed sales of less than 1%, which I think we're a little, a year ago, we probably would have expected to see a lot more kind of foreclosures and such. I think I saw statistics in February, 22% of cash buyers in February. So I say boo to that, but all in all, obviously that's a big chunk of the market. First quarter, both the last year and the first quarter of this year, first-time home buyers, hands down, are the biggest chunk of buyers out there. We're definitely seeing, I think, the most competition there. Millennials are those first-time home buyers. They're, turning 30, in their 30s, and they're either buying their first home or a move-up home with family and such. So definitely seeing a big boost there. And just, getting back to the interest rates, with a 0.5% bump to that rate that we've seen, we did see applications across the board decrease, but that was mostly for those refinancing. Don and I are, we do refinances, but it's usually referral basis, previous customers. Purchase business is kind of our focus and always has been. And, longevity in this business, that's what carries us. With that being said, you have a lot of lenders who just sort of staffed up like crazy over the past 12 months and have a lot of people new to the business who have not done a purchase loan before. So you're going to see some service levels. You see more competition as refinances kind of tap out a little bit. And somebody who's been sitting back just doing refinance for 12 months may now be trying to work with your next buyer. And that could be a little touch and go, obviously, if you've got somebody without a lot of experience. So just, anytime you're working with somebody, when you're listing agent especially, but also a buying agent, get a pre-approval letter from somebody you haven't worked with before, read it, call the person, find out, what details you need to know, and frankly, find out what they know or don't know. So just want to touch on that. Don, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I just want to elaborate on the interest rate thing, Sean. You indicated that, rates have shot up, and they have. Anybody that we've pre-approved prior to the end of February, and this is any lender that this is true with, we need to go back and look at those borrowers for the one simple fact is that rates have gone up over 0.5%, and underwriting guidelines have been tightened through Fannie and Freddie on our automated underwriting systems. And what I mean by that is it's tough for us as lenders today to get anybody pre-approved with conventional financing with less than 10% down and a 680 or less credit score, unless they have just a crap ton of assets. So you may be seeing more FHA pre-approvals for borrowers than you will see a 3 or 5% down conventional pre-approved borrower. So I know myself, I know Sean and Chris here, we're going to look back at all our pre-approvals back from February on, just to make sure everybody's still qualified for conventional financing if they do have the lower credit scores. But that is a big reason why you're going to see more FHA pre-approvals, I think, forthcoming the next quarter or two, because guidelines have been tightened on automated underwriting for us, and we have no choice but to put them FHA.
Excellent stuff. Thank you guys so much for the updates, the intel, the support, all of it. It is a big part of what we do, what we are able to do for our clients is because of our partnership with you all. Now, I want to go back to something that I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, which was we reviewed our vision as a company, which is to be the real estate company of choice and the #1 place for you to grow your business. And so as we were poring over the data over the last couple of weeks, running up to tomorrow, which is the end of the first quarter for 2021, we were comparing our organization, our greater franchisor against the marketplace. And for the first time in the history of Keller Williams in Northeast Ohio, we are #1 in units sold year to date. And so what you're looking at here is units sold by brand. So this includes every Keller Williams franchise in our MLS, just as it would include every Howard Hanna office, every Remax office, every Century 21. Everyone rolls up there. Now, for a little bit of perspective for all of you, 5 years ago in 2016, the delta between #1 and #2, they were the same companies, but Howard Hanna was on top, was over 1,700 units, right? So Howard Hanna was closing in on 4,700 units, and we weren't quite at 3,000 within the first quarter. And then if you go back even 5 years before that, when the brand was still considered very much green shoots, we were less than 1,000 units closed as a brand across all offices in our franchise system in Northeast Ohio. Less than 1,000 units in the first quarter. So this is a major milestone for Keller Williams. It's a major opportunity for us as a company, for all of the Keller Williams offices. But I think most importantly, what it speaks to is that clients choose our agents more than they choose any other brand. We are very committed as an organization to standing behind our agents, not in front of them. We do not lead with the Keller Williams brand. We help you lead with you. And I think that there's a big statement about how people choose their realtors here that's taking place, and we just hope the trend continues, and we will certainly work for that to happen. Now, units sold is pretty cool, but what about listings? Because this market's about listings, and the same is true. Listings taken year to date. So not only do more people trust you with their transaction, they trust you with their largest asset. So big congratulations to all of you. I think that this is a huge, huge accomplishment, one that is, 18 years in the making for the organization since we have come here to Northeast Ohio, and something that is really, really cool. So the last thing that we want to talk about today, so some great data points in there, some great things to tell your clients, some great pieces of marketing and branding. Hey, why list with me? Because you work with the company that lists more homes than anybody else. But then what are the additional touch points, right? Because, lead generation will get you a deal, lead follow-up gets you a business. And so we want to take advantage of the opportunity to have a conversation around what to watch for, right? Because there are a million moving parts in the global economy, but also in our local economy. So we're going to look at a few things here that we want to pay attention to as it relates to macro elements, but also some things happening right here in our own backyard. When we look at these 5 things are, the biggest non-controllables, right, as it relates to our business that we need to be aware of. And when they happen, when we see movement here, it's not a point and shoot idea, right? There's a conversation to be had with a client. There's a conversation to be had with a buyer or a seller every time something happens here, right? So we have the vaccine impact, levels of unemployment, evictions and foreclosures, political action, and then material costs. So let's walk through some of these. So anybody who got the vaccine or is in the process of doing that is a part of these numbers here. We are making great progress as a state. We are making fantastic progress as a city and as a region here in Northeast Ohio. And all of the trends are very positive here, right? And so this, as the vaccination rollout continues and we get, through April, May, and June, right, there is a high degree of confidence that we will be, approaching numbers that allow things to return to quote unquote normal. The biggest question mark here is are we going to sustain the rate that we're on? Will we run into issues, whether it's logistically, with supply or with acceptance? And then the biggest question mark around the vaccine is, once everybody's able to get back to normal, have we established a new normal, or will economic and behavioral norms come back into play? That's the largest question looming here, is if people will re-engage economically and socially as they did prior to the pandemic. Everyone could speculate here, but it's an unknown. The first gate for us to pass through to understand that is to get to a point where we have the option, right? So paying attention to this, if we continue to move at the clip we are, there's going to be an opportunity for, whether it's client events or, more people re-engaging the market, more sellers potentially coming onto the market with a higher degree of comfortability with people in their homes, whatever it is that you want to angle on here. This is a major fork in the road for what happens next. Now, what's happening with the vaccine rollout, what's happening with things coming back to quote unquote normal from a societal standpoint is going to have a tremendous impact on unemployment. So what you're looking at here is unemployment from the St. Louis Fed, focused on the what they call the Cleveland Elyria area, but it is it's their definition of Northeast Ohio in large part. And so what you could see is, leading up to the pandemic, we were hovering around, those middle single digits, right, in Northeast Ohio. And then obviously a lot happened, and and then a lot happened again there throughout 2021. But what you're seeing is that we've sort of started to settle in this, 7, 8, 9% range, which is a little bit of a lag versus the state and a little bit of a lag versus the country. And so what the main thing we need to understand here is as the economies open back up, right, as we make progress with the vaccine, if economic activity doesn't climb, which a lot of people believe is priced into the current stock market, it could put pressure from a performance and revenue or a profitability standpoint on companies, and it could lead to unemployment rising. Right now, doesn't necessarily need to go back to 5%, but it going up is a very unfortunate thing for a lot of reasons, and not least among them is what it does from an eviction and foreclosure standpoint. So you heard Sean talk about distressed sales being below 1%. And that means that, short sales, foreclosures, those things are not happening, and they're not happening in a large way because of things like forbearance and because of things like the impacts of the economic stimulus. But if the unemployment rises, if economic activity does not meet priced in expectations, then there is, and as we move through, now we're out of the filing bans, and some of the restrictions will come off of potentially from an eviction standpoint, which will mean that there will be potential economic impact to investors who have been getting some sort of subsidy or the stimulus money that's being leveraged by their tenants to pay their rent. Maybe it's somebody who is has enjoyed a career and doesn't get to enjoy that anymore based on unemployment, being a part of the unemployment numbers. But those things are very important. And again, you're looking at Northeast Ohio here. And so we're seeing evictions down year over year, or excuse me, month over month, year over year. So very important things to pay attention to, because as these start, if evictions spike, there's opportunity from a sales standpoint or a purchase standpoint, from the investor mindset. If unemployment spikes, right, especially when we localize it here in Northeast Ohio, that means, it's not a vague number. It is a company has laid someone off, right? And so we know that we sell real estate whenever life events happen, right? Birth, death, marriage, divorce, promotion, demotion. And so the opportunity for us to be aware of these things is going to be really, really important as we move through the balance of this year. I'm not sure if everyone can see. Is my screen being drawn on right now? I think not sure what's happening, but we'll go from there. I don't know if everyone can see that, but I think Colleen, I think it's you. I don't know if you're trying to zoom in here. We'll get you these slides. Just carving up my deck here. All right, so let's look at now what can be done outside of all those things. So there's a little bit of a doom and gloom there. All right, if we don't get the economic impact that we expect, we don't. We see unemployment rise, we see evictions and foreclosures rise. There's still, this all too familiar bullet in the gun called political action. And you're hearing a lot about this right now. And this is probably the biggest impact in mass on what could happen with our real estate market. And so there's, a few things highlighted here. Additional stimulus is already being talked about. It's already being talked about, right? Conceptually, we're trying to mimic Australia's 25-year bull market, and we do not want this thing to slow down at all. So that's on the table. Student loan debt forgiveness, right? I think Sean touched on it just a little bit during his piece around the loan approvals and what's happening there. Student loan debt is the biggest weight that is sitting on the millennial and the first-time home buyer right now in many, many cases. And so the consideration for debt relief to that population will free up a substantial amount of affordability and spendability. And so if the closer that gets to happening, the closer we need to be in relationship with the people that's going to impact, right? And then finally, the opportunity, and I think it would be I don't actually know if it would be a good thing or a bad thing, or a bad thing and then a good thing, but the opportunity and the conversation around the first-time homebuyer tax credit and incentivizing first-time home buyers, right, to continue to drive the market forward is on the table. It's in consideration among many other things. But I know that there's a lot of us that are tired of watching the news, or never watch the news to start with, or don't want to. But I would encourage you to set a Google alert, look for these things in the headlines. The more you can know about these macro things, the better off you'll be in terms of really zeroing in on populations to get into relationship with. And then the final thing that we'll talk about to pay attention to is just material costs. If these continue to rise at the rates that they're rising, if there's no relief here, it could be one of the few things that will create drag on the new construction market. Now, this is navigated by from a future standpoint with a lot of the bigger builders, right? They're able to spread this spike in cost out over the future purchases that they'll make. However, the longer that it stays up, the more that it actually has to manifest itself in what they pay, which means it's going to get passed through, to you as to your consumers. And so this is an important thing to pay attention to. This raises the cost of everything, quite honestly, not just new home construction, but material costs are very, very high. And so something to pay attention to there. There's a lot of good reporting out there from a quarterly standpoint that you can pay attention to there. But those things, those final things that we just went through, I'll go back to the main slide here while we wrap up. These elements, right? There's so much happening. There's so much that can happen. If you're able to just, keep an eye and an ear out for anything related to these, and use it as a way to engage your client in conversation, right? Then you will be putting yourself in a position to be their realtor of choice, to be their primary fiduciary, and to be their source of reliable information in what to do next, right? So maybe it's the people you know that don't want to sell because of the vaccine. Maybe it's somebody that has anxiety around the unemployment or what's going to happen with their job still, right? Maybe it's an investor who wants to see something, wants to see what's going to happen as more and more evictions become possible, right? Do they actually happen? And then, of course, everybody always interested in what's happening with the political football. But the more educated you can be on these things and using it to be in conversation with your clients, the better off we will be as their realtors.